The assembled warriors of the Krathian Empire stood in a semicircle around the ancient gate, their chitinous exoskeletons gleaming under the twin suns of Meridax Prime. For 3 hours they had labored, their combined strength, equivalent to moving a small starship, utterly useless against the massive barrier that separated them from the ruins beyond. Commander Zekther clicked his mandibles in frustration, his 4 arms hanging limp at his sides. The gate, constructed from an alloy lost to time, stood 30 feet high and equally wide, its surface covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. Intelligence had suggested the ruins beyond contained technology from the precursor civilization, a race that had vanished millennia before even the oldest known species had developed spaceflight. "Sir, the hydraulic rams have failed," reported Lieutenant Vexla, her antennae drooping in defeat. "We've applied force equivalent to 6,000 tons. The gate hasn't moved a millimeter." Zekther surveyed his team. 20 of the Krathian Empire's finest warriors, each capable of crushing steel with their bare hands, each trained in combat across 100 worlds. Behind them stood the Thoraxian berserkers, beings whose rage-enhanced strength was legendary across the galaxy. Even they had accomplished nothing. "Perhaps it's sealed by technology rather than weight," suggested Scholar Prax, the expedition's resident archaeologist. His smaller frame and lighter carapace marked him as a thinker rather than a warrior. The precursors were known for their mastery of. "We've tried every scanning frequency known to our science," Zekther interrupted. "There's no electronic lock, no energy signature, no quantum seal. It's just heavy, impossibly heavy." The warriors had arrived on Meridax Prime following a decoded star map found in another precursor site. The promise of ancient weapons, faster-than-light technology beyond modern understanding, and perhaps even the secret to the precursor's disappearance, had drawn the Empire's finest to this remote world. Now they stood defeated by a simple door. "Commander, we have an approaching vessel," announced the communications officer, checking her wrist display. "It's the human diplomatic courier from Earth. They're requesting permission to land." Zekther's mandibles clicked in annoyance. Humans, the galaxy's newest spacefaring species, barely 3 centuries off their homeworld, and already inserting themselves into every corner of known space. The Krathian Empire had been exploring the stars for 20,000 years, yet these upstart mammals acted as though they belonged everywhere they went. "Tell them this is a restricted military site," Zekther replied. "Sir, they say they have an observer permit from the Galactic Council, treaty rights for scientific missions." Of course they did. The humans had wormed their way into every galactic institution with surprising speed, their diplomats leveraging their novelty and their peculiar brand of stubborn charm. Zekther had met humans before, small, fragile things without natural armor, claws, or any sensible survival adaptations. They relied entirely on technology and an unsettling tendency to attempt things that rational beings knew were impossible. "Fine, let them land, but keep them away from the gate." 20 minutes later, the human courier ship touched down a respectful distance from the Krathian encampment. A single figure emerged, and Zekther felt his frustration deepen. It was a human female, young by their species standards, with dark hair pulled back in a practical style. She wore simple expedition clothing. No armor, no weapons, just a datapad and a small backpack. She approached with that characteristic human gait, a bipedal stride that somehow managed to be both inefficient and purposeful. The warriors parted to let her through, curious despite themselves. "Commander Zekther," she asked, her translator rendering her words in perfect Krathian. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen, xenoarchaeology specialist from Earth's Cultural Heritage Division. I have clearance to observe and document any precursor findings." "Dr. Chen," Zekther replied stiffly, "as you can see, there are no findings to document. We are currently delayed." Sarah's gaze swept past him to the massive gate, and something flickered in her eyes, recognition, perhaps, or calculation. She walked toward it without asking permission, her stride never breaking, and the Krathian warriors were so surprised by her audacity that they simply watched. "Fascinating," she murmured, running her hand along the gate's surface. "This isn't precursor technology at all. These patterns, they're much older, pre-precursor maybe. The geometry suggests." "Dr. Chen, we've been attempting to open this gate for 3 hours," Zekthar said, his patience wearing thin. "Our strongest warriors, our most advanced equipment, all have failed. I hardly think." Sarah wasn't listening. She had stepped back, tilting her head as she studied the gate from different angles. Then she checked her datapad, scrolling through something rapidly. "The patterns match a fragment from the Andromeda archaeological find," she said, more to herself than anyone else. "Which means, yes, it's not a lock, it's a test." "A test?" Scholar Prax moved forward, interested despite the interruption. "What manner of test?" "The precursors didn't disappear," Sarah said, still studying the gate. "Most xenoarchaeologists agree they transcended, moved to a higher dimensional existence. But before they left, they sealed away certain things, dangerous things, powerful things. This gate isn't meant to keep people out. It's meant to ensure only the right people get in." "And how do you know this?" Zekthar demanded. "Because I've read the research," Sarah replied simply. 3 different human teams have published papers on pre-precursor defensive architecture in the last decade. Nobody else bothered to translate the findings into galactic standard because everyone assumed the precursors were the oldest civilization. Humans don't make that assumption. She walked up to the gate again, this time with a different purpose. The warriors watched as she placed both palms flat against the surface. "The gate doesn't measure strength," she said. "It measures potential energy, specifically the ratio of force to mass. Species with heavy gravity adaptations, exoskeletons, dense muscle structures, you're all optimized for strength, not efficiency. The gate is calibrated to remain closed for anyone whose power-to-weight ratio falls below a certain threshold." "That's absurd," Zekthar said. "You're saying it requires weakness to open." "I'm saying it requires efficiency," Sarah corrected. She stepped back, then forward again, building momentum. What happened next would be analyzed in military academies across the galaxy for decades. Sarah Chen, who weighed perhaps 60 kilograms and stood barely over 1.5 meters tall, broke into a run. Not the cautious approach of a scientist examining ancient ruins, but the full-speed sprint of an Earth-born human adapted to a gravity well that would cripple most spacefaring species. She covered the 20 meters to the gate in seconds, planted her leading foot, and kicked. Her boot struck the geometric center of the gate. The sound echoed across the ruins like a cannon shot. The gate, which had resisted 6,000 tons of force, swung open smoothly and silently on hinges that hadn't moved in eons. Sarah stumbled slightly as her momentum carried her through, catching herself with the practiced ease of someone accustomed to Earth's punishing gravity. She turned back to face the assembled warriors, who stood frozen in collective shock. "The precursors evolved on a low-gravity world," she explained, slightly out of breath. "They were light, efficient, built for precision rather than brute force. This gate was designed to open for beings like them or like us. High power-to-weight ratio, optimized movement, kinetic efficiency." She smiled. "My kick delivered maybe 200 kilograms of force at most, but my body mass is low enough that the ratio triggered the mechanism." Scholar Prax was the first to move, scuttling forward to examine the now-open gate with wonder. "Remarkable, absolutely remarkable. The implications for our understanding of precursor physiology." "Commander," Lieutenant Vexla said quietly, "we've been outmatched by a human, a civilian human." Zekthar stood motionless, processing what he'd witnessed. His warriors, the pride of the Empire, rendered irrelevant by a young woman who'd solved in minutes what they couldn't resolve in hours. The embarrassment was profound, but slowly, grudgingly, Understanding began to replace wounded pride. "Dr. Chen," he called out. She paused at the threshold, looking back. "The Empire would be honored if you would join our expedition, officially." Sarah's smile widened. "Commander, I thought you'd never ask." As the expedition began moving through the gate, Zekther found himself walking beside the human scientist. "Tell me, Doctor, how many of these precursor sites have humans open that were sealed to other species?" "7 that I know of," Sarah replied cheerfully. "We're planning expeditions to 12 more. Turns out evolving on a high-gravity death world gives you some advantages in xenoarchaeology. Who knew?" Zekther's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. The humans, it seemed, would continue surprising the galaxy. And perhaps that was exactly what the cosmos needed. A species too naive to understand what was impossible, too stubborn to accept defeat, and too efficient to be stopped by obstacles that had stymied civilizations for millennia. The ruins ahead held secrets untold. But Zekther now suspected that the real discovery wasn't what lay in the ancient chambers beyond. It was the revelation that sometimes the youngest voices in the galaxy spoke the oldest truths, and that strength came in forms the proud had forgotten to measure.